This is James Taylor, and you're listening to The Creative Life. The Creative Life podcast is a show created for you, the creative. If you're looking for inspiration, motivation, and advice while at home, at work, or on your daily commute, then this show is for you. Each episode brings you a successful creative, whether that's a musician, writer, artist, designer, performer, educator, or creative entrepreneur. They share their journey, their successes, their failures, their creative process, their insights, and much, much more. This episode is sponsored by C-School, the online school for creativity training. If you'd like to unleash your creative potential and access a free Creativity Blueprint training series, then just head over to c.school. That's www.c.school for your free training series. In today's episode, I speak with Buckley Barlow, and we talk about story vesting, why you should start with why, and learning to say no. Enjoy this episode. Hey there, it's James Taylor. I'm delighted today to be joined by Buckley Barlow. Buckley is a data-driven customer experience growth expert with specialties in building out forward-thinking growth models and teams. As founding partner at Rocketsource, he is a sought-after growth advisor to private equity firms, their portfolio companies, and some of the most visible brands in the Fortune 100. Buckley has built and sold several ventures across multiple industries and was an early growth team member of one of the fastest growing Inc. 500 companies in history. As a previous founder of 2 digital agencies and a strategic consultancy, he's got a really unique blend of consultative and agency experience. He is the author of The Growth Code and blogs on both Rocketsource and beintheknow.co, which is a leading learning hub for forward-thinking, growth-orientated professionals. It's my great pleasure to have Buckley join us today. So welcome, Buckley.
Hey, thank you, James. All of that makes me sound really old.
You've had a lot of life experience as well. So share with everyone what's going on in your world just now.
Oh, yeah. Well, 2017 was an incredible year. We definitely kicked off some big projects. And in 2018, we're implementing a lot of those projects. So at Rocketsource, we were working with a Fortune 15 company doing well over $100 billion. That's just one of several clients that we work with. Wish we could tell you who it is, but it's a definitely a digital transformation and digital initiative that is a competitive advantage for them. And so I'll let them tell the tale. As a service provider, especially them being publicly traded, we got to be careful about what we say, but we are building some incredible strategies out for them, increasing the digital footprint and digital modernization. But what I'm really excited about in 2018 is we're building out a labs division in Rocketsource, which I'm heading up with another one of our creative partners. And in labs, we get to build some of the products that we really need to service a lot of our clientele. And we're also partnering with some incredible companies to build out some very forward-thinking products as well. So we're excited.
Awesome. So where did this all begin from? How did you get into this world? You're known now as a CX, customer experience growth expert, but where did this journey begin for you?
Oh, geez. That's a great question. I think I'd like to think that I'm pretty good at solving problems and solving complex problems and being a good strategist and a good innovator. And I'm always encountering different problems to solve or growth challenges to resolve. So I think it's the sum of all those experiences, right? I think being very well-rounded has helped me immensely. And maybe I think the momentum of where I ended up came about by accident, perhaps. I had no idea what telemarketing at the age of 17 for the U.S. ski team would teach me about cold calling, or licking envelopes at the age of 13 would teach me about what I definitely didn't want to do in life, right? And started thinking about all those experiences. And as someone that really loves consumer psychology and understanding end-to-end customer experiences, I think you have to know a lot about various areas, but be very, very deep in one specific area. I'm sure you've heard about this idea of being a T-shaped employee. I actually like to think that the V-shaped employee is the best one, where you really start to expand your skill sets. Yes, you're deep in one area, but you know a lot about your peripheral departments. And so I'd like to think that's where I fit.
Yeah, essentially, I recently had a guest, Dr. K.H. Kim, who has done a lot of research in terms of Nobel Prize winners and genius, the idea of genius. And she said most of the Nobel Prize winners, they're very, very good at boundary crossing. So they'll have their one discipline they've learned and they've become very, very skilled at. But often what they'll do is they'll go and have experiments in other disciplines, and then they'll bring those into their discipline. And because they kind of they cross these boundaries and they see these patterns between two what may look like very disparate areas, they're able to kind of combine them and create something kind of really new and extraordinary.
Yeah, I think it's hard. There's a graphic, an infographic floating around the web, and I think it's done by Salesforce and Pardot, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on this, but the infographic showcases a modern marketer where half of the marketer is creative, and the other half is a scientist, right? Mm. And on face value, you would think, okay, we get that, right? If you're a creative thinker and if you know data, you can really accentuate your creative designs. But what I have found in my experience is that when you go across these boundaries like creative and data science, you end up failing quite a bit, right? You just don't find people that use that kind of both sides of the brain that effortlessly and that easy. And so I was looking for that particular creative genius that could understand data science and go deep. And I tried to do that for a while, and I just realized it's better to create teams that understand what the other team is going through, but to have a deep expertise in one field, but then to really start exploring those other fields. So, for example, let's take content marketing. We're both in content marketing in a roundabout way. A great content marketer is going to know a lot about SEO. They're going to know a lot about design. They're going to know a lot about CRO or conversion rate optimization. But where they shouldn't go is in deep data dives, right? It's probably going to be a waste of their talent. So I'd like to think that I'm fairly well-rounded, but my specialty is really understanding people, and consumer psychology has always been fascinating to me since I was a teenager.
It's interesting, as you mentioned that, I'm thinking, I was recently reading Ed Catmull's book on the Creative Inc. about what he did at Pixar. Oh, yeah. Yep. And he, in that point, he actually speaks to that type of idea where he said whenever he really spends a lot of time in terms of thinking about the formations of his teams, to grow that. I mean, obviously it's a massive business now owned by Disney. But he said, often when they had problems in, like, for example, Toy Story 2, when they were creating that, and it just wasn't quite gelling. And he said he couldn't quite work out because he had all these really, really talented people. But he said it was the composition of the team that wasn't right. So individually, they were all very, very skilled at what they were doing. But it wasn't gelling. The composition was wrong. So he had to switch things up a little bit. And that did actually mean maybe not necessarily having the people who are necessarily the most skilled, but it's people that can work very well in a team and they can work in a collaborative way.
Well said. Yeah, very, very well said.
So one of the things I was reading, you had this kind of conceptual model on your site on the blog, and you're known as the customer experience kind of expert. But it was a circle model where we had, at the outside you had experience, and then channels, then products and services, and then I think you call it the 3 Ps: people, process, and platform. But the thing that really fascinated me was right in the middle was the why. The kind of the Simon Sinek start with why. Yeah. So can you talk through this more? Because I think it's actually a really interesting model for, especially a lot of people that may be doing more kind of traditional creative work. We get really focused on the product or the service that we're creating sometimes, or maybe the channel, how we're going to get it out into the world. But we don't think so much about the center of that target. So can you talk about that model a little bit?
Yes, boy. It's called story vesting, or the why framework. It's a proprietary model that I've developed over a lot of years. And in fact, I've taught this in many workshops over the years, and it works. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there's close to 2,000 sampling data points that have gone into this. But anyway, long story short, if you look at this, and you can see this on rocketsource.co, there's concentric circles, and in the center of those circles, on the business side, which I would call the back office or the internal organization side of things, you start with the center of the why. And something that I've learned over the years that's taken me a long time to understand, especially as I was gathering some data points. I used to think that you had to get the smartest people on your bus, right? That's all that mattered. If you get the smart people, you win. And after a lot of case studies and data points that I've studied over the years, I realized that the businesses that grow the fastest, the ones that innovate the best, the ones that are most creative, are the ones where the employees are vested. And that's where that vesting comes into the title of story vesting. And we're not talking about creating fictitious stories. All we're doing is saying, what is the value, the driver of this company? Why are they in business? What's the vision? Why are we all here coming to work every morning? And that's the story. And when you have vested employees that believe wholeheartedly in the story, it definitely showcases, and you can feel that from a customer, right? I think we've all gone through those experiences where you have a customer service agent, or you're dealing with a developer or a CEO or what have you, any type of person in a company. When they really love that company, you can feel it. And so it starts with that center. And then from there, once you have the right kind of people in the right seats on the bus, that next concentric circle in the business framework is to make sure the business model is really matching up with that why. Because for larger companies, for example, that go through tons of acquisitions, that why sometimes gets a little lost because you've mixed a bunch of different cultures through various acquisitions. Your business model may have changed. So, obviously we're going through a SaaS-esque time period, not even a renaissance, but a new discovery of business modeling where you just don't buy software anymore. You've got to lease it out, right? As software as a service. And now other business models are starting to see the value of subscriber-based recurring business models. And so is your business model relevant to the current time and the current sentiment in the market? And then from there, once you have your why, you've got your business model, which I think is the most important next concentric circle, and that is the 3 Ps. Do you have the right people, and do you have the right people in the right seats? If you've got vested employees, are they doing the things that they love to do? Are they in the right seats? And are these people are so critical because they're the ones managing the process and the implementation and the execution of the entire business model. And platforms are digital today. It's kind of like looking back 100 years ago and looking at manufacturing equipment. And it was the equipment and the people behind the equipment pushing and pulling the levers to make the machinery work. Well, today it's all about a click. And so these platforms power businesses today, much like the machinery powered an industrial company in years past. And then from there, that next concentric circle, and I'm just kind of touching on this, James, if you don't mind.
No, it's great.
Because it can go for days and days and days. The next concentric circle is the outward effect of all those 3 key things. And those are the products and services that a company is delivering to the market based upon the talent, based upon the processes, the business model, and the why. And then where you take those products and services, you have to distribute them. You've got to figure out a way to get the vision, the why of the story to the mass public. And that's where channels come into play. And I think, as you had mentioned, a lot of companies focus a lot on this concentric circle. Which channel should I choose today or this year or this quarter?
Especially as marketers, I was just speaking at a marketing convention and it seems to be a lot of the focus was around different types of channels, and there's that kind of bright shiny thing syndrome, I guess, that kind of goes on there. A new channel opens up and think, okay, we need to be jumping onto that.
Yeah. I see that all the time. From startups, from my own startups. I made the mistake a dozen times. But one thing that I have learned over the years where I have been involved in very fast growing ventures or companies that have seen phenomenal growth success is that it's not about being everywhere. It's about really maximizing the channel that makes sense for these other concentric circles. For example, if you don't need a content marketing engine, you don't even have content marketing processes in place or people to write exceptional content, why on earth would you be developing out all of your time in a channel specifically meant for content marketing? So you have to really think about how you're using the channels. And then, of course, the last concentric circle is the manifestation or the outward representation of all those other concentric circles, which is the experience. And then on the right-hand side, you have got that orange circle, which is really the consumer. This is the front-facing, what they're going through in terms of their journey or path to purchase framework. And it starts with that very center of the why. What is that first emotional trigger with a brand, right? And then it goes through a series of other concentric circles of decision making, from emotional to logical, and then, of course, when they click buy, what happens when they click buy and you're waiting for that wonderful gift from Amazon to show up? You have hope, you have excitement. So there's this very interesting thing happening in our brains where it's a part of the pathos, the emotional triggers that we essentially carved out in the very beginning when we wanted to buy a new pair of shoes because we saw these really cool shoes and now all of a sudden we want them. And then we went through the logical decision-making process of, hey, can I afford them? Would my husband kill me if I bought them? Are they relevant for me because they're 6-inch stilettos, right? So we go through all these things that happen. And then, of course, when we push click, then all of a sudden this pathos and logos come together to create this experience. And what we try to do, and what I've tried to do in my entire career, is figure out ways to increase the likelihood that those circles meet as tightly and overlap as tightly as possible. Because when they don't meet very well, you pretty much have a brand disconnect, or whatever you're serving up is completely irrelevant. When you start getting closer and they start to touch, the experiences of the customer start to touch the inside of the organization, like the people, meaning like, I am not going to go to another brand because I love the people in that company. And I think that's one of the mistakes I've made a long time ago in my 20s, is I thought business did business with business, right? I didn't realize that businesses did business with the people in the business. It's all about relationships. It's all about the people that you have hired within the company. And I used to think it was so different, but it's not.
So you mentioned some of those mistakes. I mean, you've been involved in some very fast-growing companies as well. Can you maybe talk to that, maybe a time when you worked on something, you gave it your all, but for some reason it didn't work out, or you got a sense maybe you were slightly on the wrong path in what you were trying to do? Can you give us an example of one of those moments in your life and your work?
Geez, how much time do you have, James? Maybe we should be talking about skiing right now. You're in snowy Scotland. I'm in snowy Utah. How much time should we be talking about this? There's several that I can think of. I can think of going down the completely wrong product path of developing a product and the market without a lot of market research, thinking that I knew best, and I didn't know best. The market told me otherwise, and the product flopped. Or essentially spending way too much creative time on a project and finding out that I spent way too much time on it and that competitors passed me by, right? There's so many lessons learned. But I do think that the largest one is a sum of all those that maybe is a little bit more apropos. I think my big problem being a creative guy is that I didn't say no enough. I took on way too many things, and I ended up having mediocre results. And it wasn't until I started pairing off and saying no to all these opportunities, especially equity-based opportunities, or maybe taking on way too many clients and saying yes to them because I wanted to grow into, multiple millions and hit 5, 10, 15, 20 million and just provide mediocre results. I learned that it was hard. I can't say I learned it quickly. I learned it hard over the years to realize to focus on what I do best, focus on quality work, and saying no to 99 out of 100 opportunities. And
I think as many of the creative people that are listening to this just now will feel very aligned with what you're saying just now, because especially you're coming up with ideas all the time, you're seeing opportunities all the time, you're having those conversations all the time, and things are coming to you. It's deciding which of these projects do I want to pursue and do my best work. I'm wondering how, when you finally make that decision, okay, I'm going to say no to things so I can focus on doing my best work and really focus on quality over quantity. How did you begin to make peace with yourself on that? Because I know people they say that from a theoretical standpoint, and then when they start to try and do it, they find there's this disconnect. There's two parts of themselves. That the very outgoing, creative part of themselves is kind of fighting with a part of themselves. Actually, you're too distracted. You're spreading yourself too wide.
I think I can empathize with people that have addictions, because it is like an addiction. You don't want to say no, and an idea is so great that you want to do something with it. And I'll always harken back to what my dad said. He said something very important to me. He said, an idea is like a bus. There will always be another bus right around the corner. The difference is what goes in the bus. And it's so true, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or a taxi. You could say it's an Uber now. There's an Uber on every corner. And I think that when you make peace with the fact that I'm going to choose this Uber and I'm getting in it and I'm going to make it work and I'm going to get to my destination, that sense of process and dedication to the process ends up being very fulfilling. I think so many of us are chasing dollars, chasing money, chasing that exit, chasing that perfect speaking gig, that perfect book sell that's going to put me into the limelight. We end up chasing the ultimate outcomes rather than loving the process. And I think once you love the process, you can easily make peace with yourself.
And as you've gone through your own kind of creative journey, has there been a key kind of insight or light bulb moment, aha moment in your life where you went, okay, this is the direction I want to go with my work, or this is how I want to live my life?
Oh, geez. I think it goes back to just the sum of all the parts. I do remember waking up very specifically one wintry day and saying, I don't like what I'm doing anymore. It's not fun. It's not creative. I feel very tactical. And I literally had multiple equity positions in multiple companies. And I literally called up all my partners and said, guys, I know I'm going to have to take a hit, but I really want to be bought out. And, up to this point, I was pretty happy with what I was doing, but it wasn't fulfilling. And I wanted to do something differently. And so I think to your listeners that want to create an amazing creative life, it's really tough to let go and pivot and change from what you were doing before to what you want to do. And I think you have to make the plunge and just do it. And it's going to be hard. Know that you're going to scuff up your elbows and your knees. But if you have persistence and you persevere, you'll be happy.
So we were talking about you're heavily involved in trying different things all the time, seeing where we're going, especially around innovation and customer experience. Is there an online resource or a tool or an app like an Evernote or something that you love and just really helps you do the work that you do?
Well, I love Sketch. Are you familiar with Sketch?
Yeah, I've used that one. That's links
Sketch
with Evernote, I think, as well.
Yeah, Sketch is great. It's a great little tool. Envision app is fantastic for wireframing and telling the story to multiple departments or team members. It's fantastic. Something that I brought to a lot of, believe it or not, Fortune 500 companies is Voxer. So are you familiar with the walkie-talkie app, Voxer?
No, I don't know that one.
Yeah, that has been, it's just been a huge change because I think in general, a lot of the problems with initiatives is that you just can't stay on top of your Slack channels. And so nobody has the time anymore to pick up the phone and talk. Instead, they want to be able to have a conversation still. They don't want to lose the component of human voice, which is super powerful. So you leave a Voxer or you leave I'm really plugging Voxer here. They should be paying me. But it has been a transformative app for our teams. And now it's fantastic. We've incorporated it throughout our processes.
Wonderful. And we'll put a link to all these resources, these tools, including that one on the show notes here as well. What about, this is always, I know it's a difficult one, but I'm going to ask you to recommend one book to our listeners and also one record or one album to our listeners. What would that book and that album be?
Well, first of all, let's start with the book you had mentioned early on with Simon Sinek. Start with Why. It was really interesting. When Simon Sinek first got started, I was introduced to him by a good friend, and I went to one of his first workshops that he was putting on right when his book was being published. So we had some pleasantries. We actually emailed some ideas back and forth, and he's obviously gone on to have a phenomenal career. I love that book. And it obviously meshes with a lot of the models that I've come up with over the years. So Start With Why is a great book. In terms of a song or album, how about this? I guess it depends on my mood. When I need creativity, I need a beat. I don't know about you, but I need a beat. So I would put on like a summer deep house mix, like from Kygo or something on YouTube, and I'll just let that autoplay. And if I'm in tactical mode or I need some time to just calm down and really ponder and think, I probably put on Patrick Doyle or Thomas Newman. These are composers that have a lot of strings and piano. They do scores for movies, and I'll put that on when I'm just really needing time to really ponder and think. But if I'm in creativity mode, give me a beat, baby, and ready to go. So how about you, James? Someone's got to flip the mic to you. What do you do?
Well, actually, it's interesting because you were talking about different music for different times, and I very much use that as well. I'm not going to say exactly what it is because it generally changes for me over time as well, and I may have mentioned it in the past before. But the thing I find really fascinating just now is this question. When I ask this question to a lot of people now, it used to be they would say, it was a Deep Purple album or it was something. And more people now, when I speak to them, they say, well, it's this playlist on Spotify. So
yes.
They're not thinking so much in terms of the album as a format, as a thing. They're thinking more in terms of, that someone has curated this playlist for me. And this is the playlist I find just really allows me to do amazing work. I will give a little plug to Rolf Kent, who is we've had on the show before, who wrote the music for TV shows like Dexter, film about Schmidt, for example. And he has a really interesting project called the Zen. I think it's called the Zen Music or Zen something. And what it is an album of low tones. So there's been a lot of research done into how low, steady low tones can have an impact upon your levels of creativity. So he actually put an album together, and it's just an album of tones, really, as much as anything else. Because I find when I'm writing, especially, or if I'm writing a keynote, if I have things that have a certain beat to them or a certain thing, then inevitably my writing ends up going in that way. And so I end up kind of writing almost to the rhythm. And that can be good sometimes and then not so good for other times.
I think it's mostly good though, isn't it? If the rhythm is good, at least.
Exactly. It depends what you're doing as well. And I've got a final question for you here, Buckley. Let's imagine if you woke up tomorrow morning and you had to start from scratch. So you've got all the tools of your trade, all the knowledge that you've acquired over the years, but no one knows you. You know no one. You have to restart. What would you do? How would you restart?
I would blog. I would start blogging because ultimately I wouldn't vlog. I think there's a certain demographic of people that need to vlog, and I would say the majority of everybody else shouldn't be vlogging. But the human voice and the written content, I think is a big deal for me. So I'd either start another podcast like you're doing here, or I would blog, and I would probably build an affiliate model around my knowledge. I think that's really cool today, is that you can take what you know and you can make money from it. And there's some incredible affiliate marketers. And I think that's the best way. There are incredible affiliate marketers out there, but I think it's the best way to get momentum. So if I had to get momentum quickly, that's probably what I'd do.
Well, Buckley, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing about stories about your creative life as well. What is the best way if people want to reach out to you, connect with you, learn more about what you're working on? Where should they go? Twitter.
I'm on Twitter. I love that platform. So, but I think it's at Buckley Barlow, but anybody can find me on Twitter.
Great. We'll put a link to there as well. Buckley, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, and especially sharing that conceptual model as well. I love it, and we're going to have a link here in the show notes to jamestaylor.me, and just type in Buckley Barlow, and we'll have a link directly to there so people can check that model out as well. So thank you very much for sharing all about your creative life.
Hey, James, thanks so much. And great podcast. You're having some great guests on. Love it. And you just do a great job. So I'm honored that you invited me to come on. Appreciate it.
Hey, James Taylor here again. And if you're interested in living a more creative life, then I'd love to invite you to join me as I share some of the most successful strategies and techniques that high-performing creatives use. I put them all together in a free downloadable ebook that you can get by going to jamestaylor.me. That's jamestaylor.me to get your free downloadable ebook on creativity.